Morning everybody, this is the first of 3 videos. All 3 have been uploaded nice and early, although it's the 3rd video where I'm hoping you'll be able to have your breakfast while you're watching it as part of our love feast. The 2nd video is a reflection on Psalm 133, and this one is a history, a whistle-stop tour as to why we are able to have a love feast, sharing food together, even though we are quite apart in different households. So apparently one of the ways that some people show that they love some people is by bringing them breakfast in bed. Have you ever had breakfast in bed? Maybe somebody brought you a rose in a little vase, maybe pancakes, or maybe even a full fry-up. I don't like the idea of eating in bed or eating in your bedroom. The smell can't be good. And of course, the splashings of brown sauce and egg yolk, can you imagine that on your bedclothes? Neither can I. But food is a way in which we can express love and affection. It is a way that we can share time, share conversation, and where we can listen to each other's stories, isn't it? Eating together is central in the scriptures. So this morning, first of all, before we delve into the history, I'd like you to think about who you enjoy sharing a meal with. Who was the last person you shared a meal with? It could have been 12, 13, 14 weeks ago. If you could bring anybody back, anybody from your history, anybody from your family, and you could have that meal again, who would it be and why? What did you get out of sharing a meal with that person? Was it that they made you laugh? Or maybe were prepared to listen to you? Is it because whatever they said would keep you on the end of your seats in anticipation? Was it just shared good times? I think if we like to share food with people, it's because we love them. It's because we want to invest in their lives, we want to listen to their story, and they, hopefully, ours. And that is why a love feast is a wonderful expression of Christian fellowship. The whole of the good news of the Gospels is centred, isn't it, around meals. There's the Last Supper Jesus shared with his friends. There's lots and lots of other occasions as well where Jesus is speaking to people around the table. He's speaking to people as they share, as they feast together, whether that be a picnic or a barbecue. Think of the last meal that you had. Was it a blessing or was it hassle? I know in our house, when it's tea time, I can be cooking and shouting at the same time. Shouting the girls, your tea's ready, your tea's ready, your tea's ready. And it's like they've got selected hearing. Then, when I've got everybody round the dinner table, then you've got to try and pry the phones off the teenagers, haven't you? Then, often I get the phrase, and this is often from Miriam, ugh, I don't like that. You can feel really appreciated, can't you, when you hear things like that? But when was the last meal you had? Was it a blessing? Was it hassle? It's interesting, isn't it, to think about who we share food with. It might be that you've been eating alone for quite some time now and just cannot wait to share food again. Well, hopefully you'll get something of the shared eating in the 3rd video, which is our love feast. We're called to share life together, and it's a good place to share life together at the kitchen table, the dinner table, where everybody certainly was, and sometimes still are, but not very often, sat in one place doing one thing in a shared conversation. I think we've lost something actually in society when people just come and go and eat at different times, maybe even in different rooms, because conversing while we share together is so important. We're called to share life, as we're called to share food, we're called to share story, and we're called to share the works of God. Now, the Methodist Church, in its wisdom, has decided that we're not allowed to share Holy Communion via the internet. But we are allowed, thanks be to God, to share a love feast. And a love feast can be led by anybody, lay or ordained. And the love feast has actually been part of Methodism from the very earliest days, but was often ignored in this country actually for more than a century. Now, Wesley picked up the idea of a love feast from the Moravians. He was so impressed with their sense of calm and godliness when they were on the way to America. He started asking how they got that sense of God's peace. And the love feast was one of the things that they did. The love feast actually goes back to the very, very beginning of the early church, the New Testament church. The first Christians ate full meals together regularly. And we read in Acts of the need for deacons to serve in the daily distribution of food at the tables. And we read in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians that there were people abusing this time because they were eating and drinking it all and not sharing it out. Presumably it was more than Warburtons and Ribena that they were consuming. And these meals, they had a Eucharistic element to them. Bread and wine were formally offered, but they also had a love feast element to them where food was shared and the hungry were fed. And gradually these two elements separated and we get two kind of events. We've got the symbolic Eucharistic Holy Communion, the bread and the wine. And we've got this idea of love feast or an agape meal. Now, by the 4th century, the agape was officially banned, although it survived round the edges of the empire and round the edges of the church. Part of the problem was that there were other mysterious religions that had things similar to a love feast, and it gave them a bit of a bad reputation. And 14 centuries later, Wesley reintroduced this idea of a love feast to the wider church. But ironically, some people were really suspicious. They wanted to know what was going on behind closed doors. What exactly did this love feast entail? And they kind of read all sorts of innuendo into it. And of course, it was nothing of the sort. Wesley's love feast was exciting and it was helpful. It was a way where people could share the power of the Spirit in their lives with joy and with enthusiasm. And it was the fuel and the spark for revival. How wonderful is that? Now, one of the great things about John Wesley was he could see what worked and he saw what worked well. He saw in a love feast the opportunity to deepen fellowship, to encourage testimony, the sharing of our own stories, and to allow the Holy Spirit to really work in that context of simplicity, food and conversation. And in 1739, he wrote this in his journal: Mr. Hall, Kinchim, Ingham, Whitfield, Hutchins and my brother Charles were present at our love feast at Fetter Lane with about 60 of our brethren. About 3 in the morning, I'll just stop there, can you imagine 3 in the morning? About 3 in the morning, as we were continuing instant in prayer, the power of God came mightily upon us, inasmuch that many cried out for exceeding joy, and many fell to the ground. As soon as we were recovered a little from that awe and amazement at the presence of His Majesty, we broke out with one voice: "We praise Thee, O God, we acknowledge Thee to be the Lord." That was at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this nature, this kind of experiencing, trying things out, is where the love feast is really prominent. And it comes through Wesley's words. And my question is, can we experience the same thing today? Well, I think we can. I believe that the love feast can be part of our worship. It can raise the spiritual temperature, can't it, of a congregation. And while love feasts became less frequent in the years that followed Wesley's death, they continued to be held in some places. And in recent years, the love feast has been revived, most notably, as I've mentioned, by lay pastors who have not been given dispensation to preside at Holy Communion. And as I've said before, one of the great advantages of the love feast is that any Christian can do it. And I think every Christian should. Testimonies, praise, conversation, and sharing, the focal point of a love feast. Now, Wesley counselled that it must be done decently and in order. And I'm hoping that doing this over the internet is decent and in order, although I can't imagine John Wesley ever thinking that something like this would ever happen at a love feast. So how are you going to share your love feast this morning? What is it you're going to eat? How are you going to drink? And what are you going to drink? What are you going to drink out of? Will it be a glass? Will it be a mug? Will it be a porcelain posh cup? The early Methodists commonly passed a loving cup with 2 handles, and they would pass this from person to person, and later water was served. And I've got a prayer here written by Charles Wesley, and it was written especially for the love feast, and it's recommended for use at all love feasts. And it says this: Father of earth and heaven, thy hungry children feed. Thy grace be to our spirits given, that true immortal bread. Grant us and all our race in Jesus Christ to prove the sweetness of thy pardoning grace, the manner of thy love. And so, wherever you find yourselves this morning, please tune in to video 2 and video 3. Watch Jonathan and his all-age presentation and eat your breakfast as a love feast. And may the grace of God pour out in abundance on you and all who you love, from my house to your house, from my family to your family. Know how precious you are, know how loved you are, and have a great day. Bye.